The people should not be afraid of their governments. The governments should be afraid of the people. Today, it seems that governments wield too much power in certain areas and are lax in other aspects where they should be directly involved. Where is the balance? Can it ever be found? Today, we review the topic of political corruption, taking our governments to task. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And welcome back to Ramadan Reflections for today, the 26th day of this blessed month of Ramadan. We have just a few more days left of the fast of Ramadan, and I hope and pray that again we're making the most of these days and nights that remain. Because who knows if God will allow us to see another Ramadan. You know, the commander of the faithful, Imam Ali, peace be upon him, when he sent Malik al-Ashtar al-Nakha'i to be the governor of Egypt, he sent with him a document which is preserved until today, which is the epitome of governance, of good governance, of leadership skills. And I want to quote one passage as I begin this talk for today and this reflection for today, where Imam Ali tells Malik, he says, "Infuse your heart with mercy for your subjects, for your citizens of your country. Love for them and show kindness towards them. Do not be like a ravenous beast of prey above them, seeking to devour them." He says, "For they are of two types, either your brethren in religion or your like in creation. Mistakes slip from them. Defects emerge from them, deliberately or accidentally. So bestow upon them your forgiveness and your pardon, just as you would like God to bestow upon you his forgiveness and pardon. For you are above them, and the one who has authority over you is above you, and God is above them who appointed you. He expects you to satisfy their needs, and through them he tests you." You know, this entire document, this entire beautiful statement from the commander of the faithful, Imam Ali, peace be upon him, should be mandatory reading for anybody who aspires to lead, whether it be leading a family, leading a local jamaat, a community organization, or a national or international institution, or those who seek power in society, in the various, local or federal, national levels of government. Because the words that Imam Ali provided, peace be upon him, are not meant only for the Muslims. Yes, there are some aspects which are related to Islam specifically, but the guidance that Imam Ali, peace be upon him, gave in that letter applies to anybody in a position of leadership or seeking leadership. And unfortunately, today we see that many people, not only the politicians in our federal governments and in the state and local governments, but unfortunately within our Muslim community, our leadership is not there. They're there by name. They've been acclaimed or elected to be in their positions, but unfortunately, many of them, very many of them lack the qualifications to govern and lead, but yet they're put into those positions. What is the role of a government? Have we ever thought about that? Or do we just take it for granted that we live where we live? You know, the definition of a government, or the function and the role of a government, is that we're told that governments are there to provide the parameters for everyday behavior for the citizens, protect them from outside and internal interference, and often they are expected to provide for the well-being and the happiness of their citizens. And I would add that that happiness and well-being is in this life, and as Muslims in the world to come, we believe. So the role of the government is not to be, for example, prying into every single action that a person does. They're there to not micromanage, but they're there to provide the daily needs that we require as citizens. Unfortunately, not only today, but really throughout history, from the time that, if we look at it from the Quranic perspective, from the first individuals that the Quran speaks about who had levels of power and authority and were busy corrupting the people, like we see the story of Prophet Nuh, peace be upon him, in the Quran, and prophets that would come after him and the governments at their time. There have been both benevolent and also corrupt political leaders. Not all the governments of the past and present were bad or evil or corrupt. There have been some great governments that the Quran even highlights. But there have been others that have been less than ideal for humanity, and especially those who are seeking to get closer to God in this world and to reach to some level in the world to come. In the past, corruption was really perhaps done underground. It was out of the view of people. But today, many countries and many politicians have no qualms about, airing their dirty laundry, airing their corruption in public for people to see. And obviously the levels and forms of corruption are unlimited and they continue to evolve. Sometimes they are just taking on a new name. Right? One day you call it bribery, where a person, an individual or a company will literally give a politician cash, bribes. Do this for us, pass a particular law, and we'll, this is a gift for you and you'll get more. Today we call it lobbying, where you have organizations, you have companies who want to, for example, continue to pollute or continue to push whatever it is their agenda is. And they call it lobbying because it sounds nicer than bribery or blackmail. Call it lobbying, it's a very neutral word. And unfortunately, again, our governments are extremely complicit in this. And unfortunately, for the most part, not only are the governments complicit, not only is big business complicit, but as citizens, we are completely apathetic to our governments. We vote them in because they give us false promises during the election campaign time. They come to our masjid. We give them a platform. We let them speak and lie to us in the house of God. And then we clap and we cheer and we applaud them and we support them full-heartedly. We vote them into office and we continue to support them even when they're doing the worst job. And unfortunately, as we know, in the Western world, in the so-called democratic world, for the most part, when you have two choices or you have three parties or four parties maybe to vote for, you're literally just voting for one evil over the other evil. They're no better than one another. They come with beautiful slogans. They'll come to our center and greet us with the words of peace, which they should never be using for a Muslim. And we lap it up. And this political corruption, and it affects not only us as individuals, it affects so much more. It has environmental impacts because that will allow certain companies to continue to pollute the atmosphere and the environment, giving them a free rein. And you see that happening in the so-called third world, where these companies will come in and lobby the politicians and they'll be allowed to, for example, pump water or pollute the environment, and there is little to no impunity on them because they're giving financial support to the party or to the individual. There are social impacts. We look at child labor, no rights for workers in certain parts of the world. You look at humanitarian aid, money gets laundered, money which is earmarked for humanitarian aid, for health, education, are redirected to personal bank accounts. All of this through politics and the corrupt politicians we have. And the Quran speaks about this in chapter 27, Surah Naml, verse 34, where Allah actually quotes a non-Muslim political leader. Allah quotes a non-Muslim political leader, a queen, the queen of Saba, and she makes such a powerful statement that Allah not only quotes her, he confirms her statement. So what does the verse say? It says the following: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم قالت إن الملوك إذا دخلوا قرية أفسدوها وجعلوا أعزة أهلها أذلة وكذلك يفعلون. She, the queen of Sheba, said, When kings or the political elite enter a country, they cause destruction and corruption in it, and they make the noble ones of its inhabitants abased and humiliated. That is what they really do. So brothers and sisters, you can see in this verse, God is quoting a woman who was not a Muslim. And she was telling us the actual, reality on the ground, that the political elite, they enter a country, they cause destruction and corruption and mayhem. The respected people are abased, are humiliated. And unfortunately, this is the job, or this is the role that governments play in the world today. Very few are benevolent, are loving, are caring. The only time that we've ever seen a benevolent, loving, caring government is the time of the Prophet. It was at the time of Imam Ali alayhi salam. And it will only happen again at the time of the government of our 12th Imam, Imam Mahdi, may Allah hasten his return. Let me close with a couple of points of reflection for today. Point number 1. We must never underestimate the destructive power of governments, no matter how compassionate and generous they may seem, especially during an election year. We should never think that they are looking out for our best interests. Thus, engaging with the political system in secular countries must be done with the utmost precaution and with carefulness. Point number 2, the method of ungodly secular governments, and for that matter, many of the so-called Islamic governments of the world today as well, is to follow their own personal demonic agenda and sow the seeds of animosity amongst the people. Point number 3, and we conclude. The only time that this world will see a true government for the people is under the divinely inspired leadership of Imam al-Mahdi. It is only when government is by the rule of God, by the deputy of God, that humanity will see peace and harmony. God willing, we will continue tomorrow in our next installment of Ramadan Reflections for 2021. Until then, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.